In today's video, we are going to be replacing a Ram EcoDiesel engine, so let's get into it. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We got French here, drinking a French roast coffee. And we got him, and then we also have Jonathan, who everybody's been asking where he has been hiding, but he's supposed to be showing up as well. We've got the Hellcat swapped Dakota, and what we just did was we turned the garage into a bit of a mess so that I can fit that Ram full size in here. So I had to shuffle over my toolbox, and we got so much stuff in here at the moment, but making it happen. So we're gonna start up the Dakota, bring it out, and then we're gonna reverse the Ram in. One of the things, a lot of guys are removing the entire cab to do the engine replacement on this because apparently it's easier, but I don't think I have the ceiling height to be able to do it. So I don't know, we'll see once it gets in here, we'll assess a little bit more, but I wanna back it in at least so that because this thing is huge, so it's pretty much gonna be like taking up this whole space. And we'll see what we end up with, but that way at least we can open the garage to, you know, wheel the engine out with the crane. Right now I'm just waiting for, this is Sunday, I want to yank the engine out, and the engine is supposed to arrive on Tuesday, I believe. So that's the plan, but we're gonna get a head start, get the old engine out so that when the new engine arrives we can just slam it in so I can finally get my daily on the road. So let's shuffle some vehicles and get started. Alright boys, well, we crammed this EcoDiesel into the garage and it is tight up in here, but this is what I'm saying. I don't know, I mean, it could probably go up like 4 feet, and I did center this. Like I said, we're going to be going to a different shop eventually, but this would just barely clear that rail there with that big fat towing mirror on there. So either way, we got to drain the coolant and do a few things and start disconnecting stuff. So we'll evaluate it as we go, but we'll get underway here, start disconnecting a bunch of stuff. Holy tornado winds. And we'll see what we get to. So we're just going to start disconnecting stuff. Like I said, draining the coolant, you know, taking a bunch of stuff off. We can start taking the engine cover off so we can see what we're dealing with. And we'll start getting this thing out of here. We got French getting in there, getting them clamps. So we're taking off the intake first. Oh my god, it's...
Oh, I got McDonald's in the
No, you don't. What else?
What's up, dude?
I got you some gifts.
Bro, we got key tags? Damn, look at this.
Thanks, man.
Look at this.
Fresh. Nice to meet you. Great.
Jonathan trying to keep us fresh over here. He's saying we stank.
Alright.
Truck stank.
Okay, so PCM's disconnected, airbox is out, air tube. Jonathan is taking off the brake booster. Yeah, the vacuum line. We took off the upper charge pipe and also that charge pipe, so both of the pipes to and from the turbo and the intake are off, and we're just disconnecting stuff here. So right now I'm gonna go underneath and drain the coolant into that bucket. I'll show you guys an easy way to not have a mess. I've showed it in other videos since it's a 4th gen Ram, but there's like a little tube that you can hook up and then just put it right into a bucket. All right, so we're underneath, and right here there's a little nip. You can throw this on, and then you'll see that there. You can loosen that, and we'll put this hose into our bucket, and depending on what the coolant looks like, we could maybe save it. All right, so there's the coolant draining, and everybody's just disconnecting whatever they can get after. What are you taking off right now? What is that?
Me?
Yeah, what is it?
Shroud right here.
Oh, that has to come off?
This is the belt.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Just whatever bolts you take off, just put them back in their holes once you take the cover off. So that's that. We'll disconnect. I guess this one's disconnected. We'll disconnect this big green one.
For this one? Or the, no. Yeah. No.
Alright, the green thing's off. Alright, so we got the AC compressor loose. Jonathan's doing that. We're gonna take out the fan, so got the 2 bolts here, and then a couple squeeze tabs, and we'll lift her up. Keep Jonathan away from your mom. He might try to make a move.
mom's halfway married.
Is she?
Yeah.
Well, halfway's good enough for Jonathan. All right, well, Jonathan messes around down there. We got the fan off, and we made quite a bit of room just by doing that. So we'll keep plugging away, and I'll show you guys what's next. All right, here's where we're at, guys. So we have our radiator out, AC compressors out, alternators out. There's a bunch of hoses over here that we took out as well. See the alternator on the ground. And we took the V-band clamp right there off the exhaust. Disconnected the heater hoses from the firewall. All of this is just dangling, so we have to disconnect our one ABS sensor. I guess it runs to the engine harness. And yeah, we're not gonna, I guess, take everything out of the AC system just to make it easier on ourselves. So we'll swing it out of the way because I saw somebody else do it that way. And then you'll see the harness comes across the bottom next to the power steering rack. And it comes up through here. So we're gonna disconnect that side of the harness so the harness can stay on the engine. And I think most of the stuff is disconnected, so we'll probably be able to yank it here soon. So we'll keep plugging away and we'll show you guys what's next. So I just want to show you guys, so the harness that comes across right here from the bottom of the engine comes up and it goes to this positive terminal here. So you have to disconnect that, take off all this other mumbo jumbo here. And then you also have to take off a positive lead, this one, that goes right here under the top part. Right here, it goes right there. So you take that off and then you squeeze these tabs, there's 4 of them on the outside of this fuse box. And then once you flip it up, you'll see this here, this latch, and you're gonna lift this up and take out this whole harness. So like that. So this one comes out because that one goes to the engine. Okay, so once you get that stuff out of the way, then back here, you'll see all these negative wires. Also, it comes around here. I already pulled it off, but there's a ground that goes to here. So you have to remove that one. And then you'll see that gray clip down there. There's that along with this one that I just separated. So there's that there, and the other end of it. Here's the ground, just so you see that. And then yeah, there's this one which I disconnected right there. And then let's get that one with the latch.
All right, John, what are we doing?
Disconnecting the transmission from the engine, and we're taking out the 6 bolts that are in the flex plate. I don't know if you guys can see from up there, but...
And up here we have to turn it from, what is that called, the crankshaft?
Yeah, the crankshaft. So they're turning it up there, and I have the starter motor out. 13 mil bolt that you access from the starter. So here's where we're at, guys. We have pretty much everything disconnected. I popped the fuel lines off. They're just those quick disconnects there, and there is one 10 mil bolt on one of those studs on the driver valve cover, and then you can just kind of swing them out of your way. I also did take off the master. Some guys said they had to take off the brake booster to lift it up. I might have to, but started getting that ready. So we just disconnected the master there, took out the 2 nuts, and then you can swing it out without disconnecting your lines. You just kind of move it out of your way. That's the same way that when they disconnect it to take off the cab or lift the cab, they did the same thing. Other things, I'm gonna take off the grill, and then there's these 2 13 mil bolts here that look like it holds in the intercooler, and since it's disconnected from the back, probably take out the intercooler, and then I'm hoping we can kind of flip this up and out of the way. I saw somebody else do it that way too. I'm gonna take off the grill. I might take off this color match portion of my bumper, and that way we can kind of just lift it out and through. We'll see if we have to take off the bumper. If we do, it's not the end of the world, but we're gonna take off as least amount as possible. Flex plate bolts are all out, starter motor's off, all the cooling hoses are all out, all the wire harnesses are disconnected. I think we're pretty much there. And what would you say, how many hours do you think we got in this thing?
Today?
We started what, like 10-ish?
So I don't know, 4 right now?
Maybe 4, just kind of casually, just, you know, not looking at any instructions or anything, just kind of taking off things that look like they need to be disconnected.
We're real slow too.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not all working on it. Like, we're kind of just alternating more or less. But we also had to disconnect the ABS as well, because that goes on this harness. So if you look at it, you have to squeeze this weird clip to get that out. And then there was a ground that went right next to the ABS module as well. So I think we're mostly there. Like I said, I'm gonna pop off the 4 bolts, take off the grill. If you guys haven't seen my grill removal video, I'll link that above here. You guys can check that one out separate, but I'm just gonna take it off. Well, that escalated quickly. Headlights are out, grill is out, and we took out the grill shutters. And now I'm just popping out this plastic upper cover. So there's a bolt here, and you gotta take out the screw that goes there as well for your fender liner. And we just kind of snuck it out of there. So we're gonna pop this off. And so the reason why I did that is because I thought you could take just the top off, but this is all riveted together. So pretty much have to take this whole plastic assembly thing, unfortunately, but it'll be all right because we'll be able to just drag the engine out the front. All right, well, we are taking off the whole front clip. So just so you guys know, that's French down there. Say hello. Hello. Oh, hi. Hello. You got 2 bolts on the top, and then you got 3 here. 1, 2, 3. You also have these crash sensors right here that mount inside of there. So they're 10 mil. But you have to take off this harness. This comes off your upper rad support. And then another crash sensor goes in here. So you see that one there. 10 mil bolts inside. We just put the bolt back in place. 3 bolts on the bottom, 2 on the top again. And then over here, you'll see, yeah, so you pretty much just have to make sure there's no harness connected. On this side, we had to take off a bunch of the harness stuff right here. So like we had to pull that off. So just make sure your harness is disconnected from there. And then I think it should come off. We're gonna find out in a second. Might be something holding it, but should be about it. And this thing here is like this little quick release thing here. Oh, try it now, actually. This little thing had to wiggle. You see something else holding it?
Yeah, a bolt.
Another bolt? Is it, or is it just loose?
No, it was on. Let's see. Is there something else?
I think that's about it.
I'm looking.
Hold on, slide it straight towards you.
I feel it like down here.
Something here.
Let's see.
Yeah, something here. Oh, there we go. Oh, sorry.
All right.
Yeah. It popped. Wait, tip it up.
Yeah.
Like, so that doesn't. There we go.
Alright.
And the whole assembly comes out just like that. That's pretty much how our night's going right there. So this is a lot of work, you guys. No joke. A lot of bolts are insanely difficult to get to, but we are getting to them. And we've got the engine up. I guess a couple things. This engine mount we left on, as you can probably see right there. The bracket we left on the block. This side we took it off the block just so we could get it to clear. And then some of there was a bunch of, I'll count how many, I guess, bolts there were for the transmission, but there's some that are on there that are like nearly impossible to get. There's also a sensor on the back of the turbo, which I'll show you guys, that was kind of hidden on us. And right now we're just kind of wrestling this thing out. But the whole reason why everyone says to take the cab off is because if you look right there, it's kind of hard to get the pan to clear everything. So you kind of have to come up high. So we might have to take the brake booster off. We're kind of cheating it a little bit. But so far, we'll see where we end up. Okay, guys, so real world experience for you guys. We ain't BSing anything here. So I'll show you guys. It is taking us far too long to do this. Right now, we're loosening the cab bolts. This thing, I don't know how people do it with the cab on, because this is kind of the issue that you run into. We've got the transmission jacked up as high as we can. It's fully separated, but you'll see the oil pan, it's got this crazy oil pan on it. And the back of the oil pan gets hooked right here. So it tries to lift the transmission, and then the front of the oil pan is getting hooked underneath this engine mount. And we can't go up higher. Every time we try to go up, it's hooked right here. And I can't go up higher on the transmission because the transmission is getting into the cab. So I'm just gonna lift the cab up at least 6 inches just so I can get this thing off. So we loosened all of our cab bolts. We're just gonna take them off. And I'm just gonna lift the cab up just minimally just to get this thing off. So we'll see what we do. Okay guys, so I came to a conclusion that I think the people that are taking the engine out with the cab fully on, I don't think they are describing whether they have 4-wheel drive or not. So since this one has 4-wheel drive, there is a lot more components in here, as you can see, that are preventing from just bringing it forward. So I didn't see anything documented on that. Maybe you guys have, but I think it makes a big difference. So what I did was just, I dropped this bracket here and pushed this out of the way. You can kind of see here, this is where it rubs right here on this frame tab. And it really is hard to get through here, but I think finally we have it. And we lift the cab up. You can see it's kind of got like a little lift kit here. I think so far we've lifted it maybe 4 or 5 inches, a little bit up. But definitely, if you guys have 4-wheel drive, you're not getting that thing out of there without lifting the cab. So let's continue. I think we almost got it out. Okay guys, this thing has a huge body lift right now. So I want to say we went up probably 8 to 10 inches to be able to just barely clear this thing. Look at, you see the look on French's face, he's tired. So this is where we are at. And you can see it just barely clears all this stuff, but we'll be able to manipulate this out of here. So we're gonna go ahead and wiggle this thing out, and she's finally out. But that is a pain. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it's because it's 4-wheel drive. We've got all those extra components in there that we're trying to lift it over top of. But I think we're good. Alright guys, well it is the next day. We stayed up till almost 2 in the morning trying to figure this out because there's not a whole lot of information, so I'm hoping this video can hopefully serve as that. So you can see we ended up lifting up the body, like I think I mentioned last night, about 8 to 10 inches. But I did notice something in doing some digging, and I didn't really see it talked about. So I think I mentioned that I had to, since it's a 4-wheel drive truck, I had to drop this side down. So I dropped this side of the 4-wheel drive. But what I did notice is on another post, it wasn't mentioned, but I did also see the person removed this bolt and effectively dropped this whole thing down and out of the way. So I think if you're gonna do this, definitely take that extra step. I still think you probably should end up lifting the cab, but I think if you took this bolt out, you could probably drop this down enough to be able to sneak it out a little bit easier without having to come up so high, because we had to come up pretty high to be able to clear this and kind of sneak it over that. I think if you were to take this bolt out, you could drop your front differential down and it would make for a lot more room between this bracket and this bracket, which are welded to the frame. So that's about it. These bolts up top are extremely hard to get to. So you'll notice up here, these ones are pretty hard. I did remove this here from this bracket. So there's a 13 mil here because this was up on that. And taking this out, you can then move this line around like you can see, and then I could get my hand up to here. So, but even still, I had my hand up here and we ran a bunch of extensions to the back, and I had my buddy removing the bolt with the extensions from the back, because you can see up here and there's not a lot of room. Even this one here was pretty hard to get to, but you can see they are all off. And what else can I mention? If you're gonna do like this, lifting the cab, just make sure everything is free. So these I just popped out of the little Christmas tree clips, popped them out of here so they had enough room. We did end up disconnecting the condenser, but I left the transmission lines intact because it's a bit of a procedure to top up the fluid and whatnot on these 8-speeds, so I didn't want to have to go through that. It's easier just to refill the AC system instead. What else can I show you guys? There is a vent that goes on the top of the transmission that you guys can see right there, so just keep an eye out for that. This was 4 bolts to take out the brake booster, but now that we lifted the cab, we probably didn't have to, but I was just trying to see if we could do it without lifting the cab. But honestly, lifting the cab isn't that bad, you guys. There's 4 bolts on each side, and then you can pretty much lift it up as long as all your harnesses are disconnected. We disconnected this harness here, and I disconnected my parking brake cable, and that was about it. It could pretty much come up after that. So that's pretty much a wrap for that. I'll show you guys the engine, and then on part 2 of this video series, I will be putting the engine back in. One other thing too, just if you guys are gonna do this, you'll see the fuel lines are over here. So we left all the hard fuel lines. There's also a quick disconnect over there, which you don't have to disconnect them down there, and I really didn't want to because I didn't want to have, you know, diesel fuel, you know, pouring on our face while we were down there. So I managed to use the quick disconnects here and left it all down there because I wasn't sure if it was gonna start coming out of the lines quite a bit being down there. So that was another nice thing as well. Oh, one other mention is you'll see this bracket that normally goes on top that I guess holds the engine cover. This was only 2 8mm bolts and we were able to slide it out because otherwise it starts to get into the cab if you're trying to lift up the engine. And here we go, guys. So here's the ECODIESEL engine all out in its glory. So that's pretty much it, you guys. Like I mentioned, here's where the 2 bolts go that hold that engine cover thing. So I'm sure we're gonna have to swap over some stuff. Oh, one other thing I can show you guys is there's a lot of discrepancy on how to lift this thing. What I did and what I came up with was we had one of these larger ratchet straps, not the super thin ones, but Jonathan actually had one of these thicker, heavier duty ones. And what I did was I hooked it through the starter hole. So I hooked it around there, definitely a sturdy piece of metal. Came across here, went underneath this injector line, and I disconnected these. So these go to the top of the fuel injectors, as you can see there. So you just pop up these little brown parts, and then I fed it underneath here. I guess technically you don't have to remove this, but I didn't want to compromise anything. So we just went across there, and then coming across to the front of the engine. Again, I didn't want to break anything, so I came across here, through here, and then I hooked it, hopefully you guys can see, I hooked it around the engine mount right there. Hopefully you guys can see that. So there's that upper bolt right there. I hooked it around, so it came across here, through where our alternator used to be, across this metal portion, and then right up to the top. So I think you guys can probably do that rather than trying to make a bunch of brackets and stuff to try to find a place to lift this thing. I didn't want to go across here because I want to be putting a bunch of stress on our EGR cooler and all that stuff because this looked a little bit more fragile. This was the best way I found, and it lifted it up, and it actually lifted up pretty nice. The back kind of dropped and it was pretty level lifting it that way. So anyways, she's out. And I also think I mentioned there's a lot of chaos going on over here. This is the vent that goes to the top of the transmission like I was showing you guys, but there's, even though it might look like there's a lot of stuff running there and you can't see and it's frustrating, there's a V-band clamp here as well, but this does have to get unplugged. So it's easier to unplug it, and this plug is on the top of the transmission. So not the most fun plug to get to, but this is the one. You can kind of identify it by this green tag. If you look for this green tag up on the top, and you'll find that. So, and right here you can see a little bit better. So this bolt was one of the ones that was a little bit harder to get to. And this one isn't so bad, but you can get around to it coming up this way. But these ones all have to get access coming up through here. So that's going to be a wrap for today's video, you guys. That was a lot of work. But like I said, there's not a ton of good documentation on how to accomplish this. Like I said, if you're going to leave the cab on, you have to take off the brake booster. And I would probably drop the front axle. So I would probably lower that whole thing so that you can get it out a little bit easier. We didn't really know, and I didn't really think about it, the fact that you could drop that to lower it and that it would make it easier to get out. But at the same time too, honestly, the cab was only 8 more bolts, and just to lift it up a little bit, we didn't take it up all the way. So I think that was a little bit easier, just giving ourselves a little bit more room, and it really wasn't that much more work. It probably took us an extra half an hour to 45 minutes just to boost the cab up a little bit more. But, and again, I don't have the ceiling height to go all the way up. So that was the other thing and other reason why I was trying not to take the cab up and off to be able to change this. So anyways, she's out. Watch for part 2 of this series. We're going to put the engine back in. I'm just waiting for it to arrive, but wanted to show you guys the removal process. If you guys enjoyed it, found it helpful or informative, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. See you guys on the next video.